Hey everyone, welcome to BingeBot. Today we're going Greek with Percy Jackson and the Olympians, a tale about a young teen whose life is turned upside down when he discovers a hidden mythological world. But before we get started, we're happy to announce that you can now support our channel through YouTube memberships, Patreon, or Buy Me a Coffee, and unlock a range of exciting perks along the way. By joining our community, you'll enjoy benefits like priority response to your comments, early access to our latest videos, and access to our finished scripts. Plus, as a top tier supporter, you can even choose your favorite TV show or movie for us to recap. We appreciate everyone's support as it helps us keep the content rolling and ensures that you'll always be up to date on the latest and greatest TV shows. With that said, let's get started with Episode 1. I accidentally vaporized my pre-algebra teacher. In the suburbs of New York City, Percy Jackson, a 12-year-old boy with a long history of mental issues, struggles to fit in with his peers. Since his preschool days, Percy has been plagued with bizarre hallucinations that manifest as mystic, supernatural creatures that no one else can see. Thanks to his mental illness, the preteen finds it hard to concentrate at school and is often bullied by his classmates. One day, Percy, alongside the rest of his class, heads on a field trip to their local museum. There, Mr. Brunner, the class teacher, hands Percy a pen and asks him to keep it safe, as it is a mighty instrument. During lunch break, the preteen hangs out with Grover, his best and only friend in school. And as the two boys enjoy their meal, Nancy, the class bully, shows up and throws her lunch at them. While Grover ignores her, Percy is enraged and confronts Nancy, and in a surprising show of supernatural strength, Percy stretches out his hand and uses telekinesis to throw Nancy into a nearby fountain. But before the preteen can process what just happened, Mrs. Dodds, one of the school teachers, walks towards him with a threatening demeanor. As she draws closer, Mrs. Dodds changes into a winged creature called a Fury and lunges towards Percy. To protect himself, the preteen recalls the pen that Mr. Brunner had handed him earlier and whips it out. Shockingly, the writing tool turns into a golden sword, and Percy uses it to attack Mrs. Dodds, whose real name is Electo, and causes her to wither to dust. With the danger averted, the preteen passes out and wakes up to see his classmates and Mr. Brunner surrounding him. When he regains his bearings, Percy asks about Mrs. Dodds' whereabouts, but no one seems to remember her, almost as though her memory has been wiped from all of their brains. Later that day, Percy returns to school and is suspended by the school authorities for tossing Nancy into the fountain. The preteen returns home to his loving mother, Sally, and his jerk of a stepdad, Gabe, with whom he has a rocky relationship. While Gabe hurls insults at Percy, Sally welcomes him home with open arms and decides to take him to their family cabin in the woods. There, Percy tells his mom all about the strange occurrences that have happened earlier that day, but upon hearing this, Sally decides to tell Percy the shocking truth about his supernatural heritage. It turns out that Percy isn't mentally ill at all, as he's been previously led to believe, but is actually a demigod with the powers to see mystical creatures.
Mom, what's happening?
You are a half-blood. And half-bloods are not safe in the world.
Apparently, Percy's biological father is an anonymous Greek god who fell in love and bore a child with Sally 12 years ago. Sadly, being a demigod comes with enormous risks, as mythological creatures frequently hunt them, which explains why Dodds attacked him earlier. Naturally, Percy has a hard time believing his mom and thinks she's just playing pranks on him. However, before he can interject, the duo hears a knock from outside and finds Grover at the door. Sally lets him in, and once inside, Percy notices something off about Grover. Upon closer inspection, he discovers that his best friend has goat-like legs. After pointing this out, Grover explains that he's a satyr, a half-horse, half-man species tasked with protecting demigods. Grover warns that a creature is coming after Percy and suggests that they head to Camp Half-Blood, an isolated sanctuary and training facility for demigods. Wasting no time, the trio hits the road and drives to the camp, but on the way there, a minotaur attacks and tries to kill Percy. In a selfless act, Sally sacrifices herself to buy Percy some time and ends up in the hands of the monster as she disintegrates into dust. Seeing this, Percy is livid and furiously attacks the creature, and fueled by rage, he manages to take the Minotaur down before passing out entirely. When he does wake up, Percy finds himself in Camp Half-Blood and is welcomed by Mr. Brunner, who is revealed to be a satyr named Chiron. Episode 2. I become Supreme Lord of the Bathroom. The next morning, Percy walks around camp and runs into Dionysus, a god with a drinking problem who works as the camp director. Minutes later, Chiron shows up and gives Percy a tour around camp while explaining how the community works. The demigods are split into various houses based on the identity of their parents. However, since Percy has no idea who his father is, he lives in the cabin of Hermes, the god of travelers. There, the newly discovered demigod meets Luke, one of Hermes' kids, and the two hit things off, with Luke giving him an in-depth lecture on the demigods' lives. Luke explains that the demigods strive for glory, which makes them more recognized in the mythical world. Desperate to discover who his dad is, Percy suspects amassing glory would make his father notice him. To do this, the rookie demigod trains to enhance his combat skills, but fails woefully with every attempt. Later that day, Percy meets Annabeth, the daughter of Athena, the goddess of wisdom. Annabeth recruits Percy's help in winning Capture the Flag, a monthly competition held amongst the demigods, and the following day, the competition kicks off as two factions of the camp battle against each other. The game's rules are simple. Two teams each have one flag, and the first to retrieve their opponent's flag wins. Annabeth is declared the leader of one group, while Clarisse, the daughter of Ares, the god of war, spearheads the other. During the game, Annabeth draws up a strategy to use Percy as bait to distract Clarisse and her squad while the rest of the team steal the opponent's flag. Thanks to Annabeth's strategy, Percy's team emerges victorious and gains some glory in the process. As the competition ends, a magical trident appears over the demigod's head, which reveals Poseidon, the god of the sea, as Percy's father.
Percy Jackson, son of Poseidon.
Later that day, Percy meets with Chiron, who gives him a lecture on the gods' culture. From the satyr, Percy learns that in Greek mythology there are three main gods: Zeus, Poseidon, and Hades. Since they are the most powerful of the bunch, these three entities made a pact to never bear any demigods. However, Poseidon broke this rule, thus making Percy a forbidden child. Furthermore, Chiron reveals that Zeus's thunderbolt was recently stolen, and has brought about rumors of an impending war. The god of lightning suspects that his brother, Poseidon, is behind the theft, and as a result, has issued an ultimatum, that if the thunderbolt isn't returned within a week before the summer solstice, Zeus swears to wage war against Poseidon and, by extension, the entire world. To resolve the dispute and stop the war from happening, Chiron asks Percy to embark on a quest to find the thunderbolt and return it to Zeus. The bolt is believed to be in the Underworld with Hades, so the quest is expected to be intensely dangerous. Initially, Percy rejects the offer, however, moments later, Grover appears and delivers some shocking news. The satyr reveals that Percy's mother is not actually dead, but was snatched by Hades to the Underworld.
Your mother was stolen by Hades, which means she's with him now in the Underworld. That's where they want you to go too, isn't it?
Hearing this, Percy finally accepts the quest to retrieve Zeus's thunderbolt and save his mother from Hades' realm. Episode 3. We visit the Garden Gnome Emporium. Before Percy leaves the camp, he visits the Oracle of Delphi, an all-knowing entity with the power of prophecy. The Oracle tells Percy that he'd successfully retrieved the bolt, but, in the process, would be betrayed by a friend and fail to save what matters most. The demigod is disturbed by the prophecy, but continues the quest regardless. Percy chooses Grover and Annabeth to accompany him on the journey and says goodbye to Luke before leaving. As a parting gift, Luke hands Percy a pair of winged flying shoes and wishes his friend good luck.
A gift from my dad, Maya.
Together, Percy, Grover, and Annabeth leave the camp and stumble upon a tree on their way out. Annabeth explains that the tree is actually Thalia, her long-lost friend and Zeus's daughter. Apparently, Thalia was brutally injured on her way to Camp Half-Blood and was on the brink of death when Zeus transformed her into a tree to stop her from dying. After Annabeth pays her respects to Thalia, the trio begin their journey to the Underworld and board a bus going out of state. On the way, they get attacked by Alecto and another Fury sent by Hades to capture Percy. Alecto tries to convince Annabeth to hand over Percy, but Athena's offspring refuses. Luckily, the group manages to escape the bus and walks through the woods as they continue their journey. Minutes later, Alecto finds the demigods and tries to attack them again. However, Medusa, a cursed human with snakes on her head, intervenes and saves them. Thanks to a spell placed on Medusa by Athena many years ago, her gaze is extremely dangerous, as it turns anyone who looks at her bare face into stone. Medusa, wearing a hat to protect the children from her gaze, invites the kids into her home and offers them some lunch. While Percy and Grover happily accept her invitation, Annabeth is suspicious of the snake-headed creature. Moments later, Annabeth's suspicions are validated when Medusa removes her hat and tries to kill them. The kids race to the basement and find a tomb filled with all sorts of petrified dead creatures, including Ferdinand, Grover's uncle, whom Medusa had also turned to stone. Once Medusa enters the basement, Annabeth uses an invisibility cap given to her by Athena and renders Medusa invisible, hence allowing Percy to cut off her head, which ultimately kills her. Using Medusa's decapitated head, the group turns the pursuing Alecto to stone, after which they send Medusa's head to Olympus, the home of the gods, to send them a message. Episode 4. I Plunge to My Death. Later that day, the trio boards a train to continue their journey, and during the ride, a passenger approaches the demigods and introduces herself as Echidna, the mother of monsters. Before the kids have much time to react, Echidna unleashes her pet beast, the Chimera, which stings Percy. In response, Annabeth charges and injures the creature, allowing the group to make a run for it as they get off the train. In dire need of protection, the group heads to a nearby Athena temple to seek refuge from Echidna and her Chimera. Shortly after, the Mother of Monsters, accompanied by her pet beast, locates the demigods and corners them at the temple. To make matters even worse, Percy discovers that he's been poisoned by the Chimera's sting from earlier and grows weaker by the minute. To protect Grover and Percy, Annabeth volunteers to buy them time to escape while she faces the pursuers alone. However, before she can do this, Percy trades places with Annabeth and locks his friends out as he battles Echidna and her Chimera from the temple's top. Overwhelmed by the Chimera's strength, Percy loses the fight and falls from the temple's roof. But luckily, before the demigod hits the ground, Poseidon intervenes and sends a stream of water which transports Percy to a nearby river. Within the water, the demigod hears a voice instructing him to head to Santa Monica to meet his father, who will surely help him reach the Underworld. Episode 5. A God Buys Us Cheeseburgers. Eventually, Percy makes it out of the river and reunites with Annabeth and Grover as the trio continues their journey towards the Underworld. However, thanks to the brawl at the temple, the kids are now wanted fugitives by the police. To avoid the cops, the demigods hitchhike to a local diner, where they run into Ares, the god of war. After introducing himself to the demigods, Ares offers to take them to the Underworld, but in exchange, asks for the kids to retrieve his shield from a nearby amusement park.
Okay, so here it is. There's an amusement park up the road. I left my shield there. You get me my shield back, and I'll get you to the Underworld by lunch tomorrow with a plan to invade Hades' palace.
While Grover stays with Ares at the diner, Annabeth and Percy head to the park to retrieve the shield, and after a brief run-in with Hephaestus, the god of craftsmanship, the demigods recover the shield and return it to Ares. Keeping his end of the bargain, the god of war offers them a truck headed towards the Lotus Casino, Hermes' hideout. Ares details that Hermes is their best bet to completing their quest on time, as, with some luck, the god of travelers can safely lead them to the Underworld. The demigods are weary of Ares, as the god of war has a reputation for being deceitful, but with no better alternative, the trio boards the truck and hopes for the best. Episode 6. We take a zebra to Vegas. As the group journeys to Hermes' hideout, Grover reveals that he and Ares talked for a long time in the diner. During their conversation, Grover figured that Ares knew who stole the lightning bolt and was trying to best protect their identity. This leads the group to suspect that his daughter, Clarice, might have been behind the theft. Hours later, the demigods arrive at the Lotus Casino and split up to look for Hermes. While Grover heads on alone, Percy and Annabeth explore the casino together. Soon after, they find Hermes and ask the god for help to get to the Underworld, but sadly, Hermes denies their request and turns them down.
Are you gonna help us or not?
I don't get involved anymore. It's just not worth it. I'm sorry.
Desperate to get to Hades' realm, Annabeth steals the keys to Hermes' car and searches for Grover alongside Percy. When they find him, Grover temporarily doesn't remember them, revealing that the Lotus Casino causes its visitors to slowly lose their memory to get them trapped inside forever. As the trio reunites and heads out to Hermes' hideout, they discover that time has moved slowly inside the casino. Though they've barely spent an hour inside, several days have passed in the outside world. This puts a major wrench in their plans, as the quest deadline is now only a few hours away, and wasting no time, the demigods board Hermes' car and get to Santa Monica. There, Percy enters the ocean and searches for his father. Sadly, the demigod is informed by a Nereid that the quest's deadline has elapsed. As a result, Zeus has officially declared war on Poseidon, and the sea god is left to prepare his troops for the upcoming battle.
Zeus's deadline has elapsed. Your father has gone to marshal his forces and prepare for war.
Despite the elapsed deadline, Percy is still determined to complete his quest and journey to the Underworld. And moved by his determination, the Nereid gifts Percy 4 orbs to help him and his associates escape the Underworld once their quest is completed. Episode 7. We find out the truth. Sort of. After bidding the Nereid goodbye, Percy hands Annabeth and Grover 1 escape orb each, and the team resumes their journey towards Hades. This time, their quest leads them to a mattress store believed to house a hidden doorway to the Underworld. But upon entering the store, Percy meets his stepbrother and Poseidon's evil son, Procrustes. The evil stepbrother tries to lure Percy into a trap, but luckily, Annabeth shows up just in time and disarms Procrustes. And minutes later, the trio finds the hidden doorway in the store and finally gets to the Underworld. On their arrival, the demigods spot a gate in the distance and try to enter it. However, before they can get far, Charon, the ferryman to the underworld, stops them and orders his three-headed hound, Cerberus, to kill the trio. With the monster in hot pursuit, the demigods swiftly take to their heels. However, during the race, Annabeth uses her orb and escapes to the living world before Cerberus can get her. Meanwhile, Grover and Percy seize the opportunity to escape and arrive at a desert-like plain. There, Grover, who is currently wearing the winged sneakers gifted to Percy by Luke, gets dragged by the shoes into Tartarus, a bottomless pit where Kronos, the father of the elder gods, is imprisoned. Fortunately, Percy intervenes in time and saves Grover while the winged shoes fly off into the abyss. As the duo spends a minute to regain their bearings, Percy opens up his bag and receives the greatest shock of his life. Right there, in his backpack, is Zeus's thunderbolt. Retracing his steps, Percy recalls the backpack isn't actually his, but was given to him by Ares. With that, the demigod confirms that Ares was involved with the thunderbolt theft and suspects that he might even be in cahoots with Hades. But despite finding the bolt, Percy and Grover continue their journey to meet Hades so they can free Sally and return to the living world. On reaching Hades' palace, the kids learn from the god of the dead that they've gotten the entire situation wrong. Contrary to popular belief, Hades wasn't involved in the thunderbolt theft at all and hasn't been in cahoots with Ares. Instantly, Percy realizes that Kronos, the father of the gods, was the mastermind behind the theft and orchestrated the entire ordeal to spark a war between his children. This revelation greatly frightens Hades, as Kronos, the king of the Titans, is an immensely powerful being with a strong hatred for the gods. Though he's currently imprisoned in Tartarus, it's clear that he still has a reach on the outside world and is trying to sabotage his children.
What?
If Kronos is somehow planning to emerge from his exile, and you were his first call, you're not safe.
After piecing these pieces together, Percy asks Hades to let Sally go, but the god of the dead offers him a task in exchange for his mother's life. Apparently, Hades' Helm of Darkness also went missing on the same day that Zeus' Thunderbolt was stolen, and hence, the god of the dead asks Percy to find and return his helm before he gives Sally up. Accepting his terms, Percy and Grover use their escape orbs to return to the living world in order to find Hades' helm. Episode 8. The Prophecy Comes True. Annabeth and the two boys reunite on a beach and are shortly after confronted by Ares, who tries to kill them and confesses that he's been working with Kronos and also stole Hades' helm. Challenging Ares to a duel, Percy proposes one-on-one combat, where whoever draws first blood wins the fight and gets the helm alongside the Thunderbolt. Confident, the god of war accepts Percy's terms and the fight begins. As expected, Ares dominates the match and gains the upper hand thanks to his superior strength and combat experience. However, in the middle of the match, Percy controls the ocean's tides and uses them to disarm Ares, and with the god of war defenseless, Percy attacks with his sword and manages to wound him, hence drawing first blood and winning the fight. True to his word, Ares gives up Hades' helm and Percy hands it to Alecto, who returns the piece to the Underworld. And after the battle, Percy heads to Olympus to give Zeus' Thunderbolt while Annabeth and Grover return to Camp Half-Blood. Upon getting to Olympus, Percy hands Zeus the Thunderbolt and narrates all of his findings, including Kronos' plan to spark a war among the gods. Despite learning of his father's plot, Zeus refuses to call off the war and dismisses Percy.
The war proceeds. It ends with victory.
And desperate, the demigod calls Zeus out for being irrational, which greatly angers the god of lightning and prompts him to attack Percy. Fortunately, before Zeus can get to him, Poseidon shows up and stops his brother. To protect Percy, Poseidon surrenders and begs Zeus to stop the war, and this time, Zeus agrees and leaves Poseidon alone with Percy. Afterwards, the demigod finally gets to meet his dad for the first time, and the duo shares a brief moment before Poseidon forcibly sends Percy back to Earth. Upon arrival back home, the demigod returns to Camp Half-Blood and receives a hero's welcome. Though the quest has been complete, Percy's mind isn't at ease as he's sure someone from the camp worked with Ares and Kronos to steal the Thunderbolt. At first, he suspects Clarice, but after some thought, Percy figures out that the mystery accomplice is actually Luke. This explains why the winged shoe that he gifted Percy tried to drag Grover to Tartarus, where Kronos is imprisoned. Percy then confronts Luke and confirms that he is indeed the Thunderbolt thief, thus validating the Oracle's prophecy of a friend betraying him.
You worked with Ares to plan it on me. So when the shoes you gave me pulled me down into Tartarus, the bolt would be delivered right to Kronos.
Luke explains his reasons and cites that the gods are terrible parents who abandon them and have no empathy.
And they couldn't care less what we want. They're bad parents, Percy. And they've gotten away with it for far too long.
He desperately tries to win Percy over and asks him to join Kronos' cause, and when the water demigod refuses, Luke attacks him and is seconds from finishing him off when Annabeth intervenes and stops him. On her arrival, Luke rips through the camp's protective barrier and runs off. The following day, Percy, Annabeth, and Grover leave camp to visit their respective families. Grover gets a searcher's license and joins the veteran satyrs to look for Pan, the protector of the natural world, who has seemingly disappeared from the face of the earth. Meanwhile, Percy heads home and finds Hades has finally returned his mother to the living world. And for the next few weeks, Percy is plagued by nightmares where Kronos invades his dreams and declares him the key to his return. Meanwhile, Gabe, Percy's lousy stepdad, receives a parcel sent from the gods, and on opening it, he finds Medusa's head inside and instantly turns to stone. Well, that wraps up Percy Jackson and the Olympians Season 1. Thanks for watching, guys. What did you think of the show? For all my book fans out there, was this a faithful adaptation, or do you think they missed the mark? Let us know in the comments below, and as always, if you enjoyed the video, consider sharing it with a friend or just drop us a like. And for more great videos, be sure to subscribe to the channel and ring the notification bell so you never miss a new one. You can also consider supporting us through YouTube memberships, Patreon, or Buy Me a Coffee, but we appreciate every single viewer no matter what. Thanks again for watching, we'll catch you next time, guys, and for now, this is BingeBot, logging off.